The following program contains adult language, poor taste in jokes, racial slurs, political slurs, slants, and all sorts of things that, if you are sensitive and have a delicate constitution, you should probably go watch Teletubbies. You were warned.
Hey kids, welcome back to Roto Talk.
Hey kids, welcome back. It is Saturday. My living room has ceased to exist because my daughters and my wife have decided to decorate for Christmas, which I'm helping with fixing stuff with glue and CA glue and hot glue and caulk and whatever shit broke throughout storage process of last year. But anyway, so today with our Super Sport, one correction. Yesterday, I forgot. I had this revelation last night sitting on the couch. Remember when we doubled these? These are for the throw handle that go in the side. They're not really supposed to be doubled. You should put like one on one side and one on the other.
If I find the man that's responsible for this, I'll hang him.
Here on the hole. But it's not the end of the world if you already did it. You can just put it on there as a double. It still gives you 3 layers of thickness. It'll be okay. So that these are not technically supposed to be doubled, but I don't know, for some reason that just sprung on me. I was like, I wonder if I did that wrong. But it doesn't matter. As long as you've got some good support there, you'll be fine. All right, so we're going to do the upper and lower chines. So the upper are going to be the upper, okay, meaning the top of the boat. See the UC? All right. So we're building this boat upside down. So the lower chines are what's going to go right here. Sorry, smoking hot wife interruption. So what I usually do with this, again, I do mine a little bit different, is I will, if you follow the manual, I believe they use clamps to do it. I don't. I use CA glue. It's just how I do it, to tack them in, and then I epoxy everything in. And then I actually run extra epoxy after the boat's in. I just don't like waiting for all that stuff and all the clamps and all that. You don't really need it. So I'm actually going to start with the lower chine. I'm sorry, upper chine. We're upside down. Okay. UC, University of Calluses. All right. And then what we're going to do is same thing with the cracker. All right. You want to make sure. See that? You're all the way in, okay? I start with the upper just because it's easier to see. If we start with the lower, I'm going to move this, my editing here. Because if we start with the lower chine, it's just harder to see all this stuff. So what I'll usually do, I take some CA in our activator, and believe it or not, I kind of just pin it in the middle real quick. I just do a little bit of a drop right there. I make sure it's nice and flush, tight up against the bulkhead. There's a reason I do the center first. Okay. Then, while I'm holding that, because it's not cured yet, I'll make sure these are all copacetic. And if you did a good job setting everything up, everything should line up fairly nice. Okay. So remember, we don't glue the one that says no glue. That would be bad. Let's go down here. I'm going to hold the one I just glued, so you want to make sure you're in all the way in the notch and flush against. So don't be afraid to move your head. You want that gap right there to be flush. Nice and tight. Okay, and I'm just putting a little drop of CA. A little schmear. Not a drop. More like a tiny little fillet. Okay? And then once you get about 3 of these, we're going to do the same thing with the stern. Once you get about 3 of these in, you won't have to hold it. So move your head a little bit. Make sure you're getting everything where you need it. And these are just tiny, tiny, light little tacks. Nothing excessive. Because we're going to glue this, epoxy this in. Alright? So we're just doing a touch. These are, all this CA glue is doing, honestly, when you guys see me do this, I did this on the cracker box and all that stuff. It's taking the place of clamps is all it's doing. It's not adding any strength whatsoever. It's just holding it together for you. Nothing really else. So we're going to fit that one in again. Make sure it's going in the... Where'd my glue go? Dumbass. Make sure it's flush. Again, don't be afraid to move your head around. Take a look at that. And before you epoxy this, make sure everything's in and flush. Okay? Flush. Like I just tell you. It's a little scary. If you're not used to doing it. Okay. Same thing with this. Just stick your fingertip under there. Okay. Bit of a shot. Now, I'll move the camera in a second. There's a notch up here where the upper chine is going to fit into the keel or the nose, the bow, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to keep holding my finger there because this CA is just tacking, man. I mean, it's not crazy. Okay. So there's a tab. See that tab? That goes into that hole. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put, there's a little bit of a gap there. And I'm going to stick some, I don't know if you guys can see it. I'm going to stick some CA in there. Again, just taking place of clamps. Now, if you don't want to do it this way, completely fine. Go ahead and use epoxy. Don't use CA. And clamp it all up. Do a dry fit first, and then clamp it all up, and then just epoxy everything in. It's fine. And that's how the manual, I believe, shows how to do it. Now, I've built a lot of boats. I've built a lot of crackers, a lot of super sports even. Well, this is the third super sport. And I have never had one come apart. So I'm not, if it works, don't fix it, right? Now, another thing we're going to do, deck supports, okay? I probably should have done this before that, but that's okay. You've got a tapered end, and then you've got the notched end, okay? Tapered end goes towards the bow, I believe, okay? And they are identical, no difference. So all we've got to do, same principle. It's going to go to bulkhead 1, and you're going to line it up in the notches, right there, okay? Same rules apply. Make sure it goes all the way up. I put the rear in first. And then, as usual, see when you put this in, see how it's below the bulkhead? See how it's perfect? Below, perfect, below, perfect. Make sure it's perfect. There we go. Okay? I'm going to put us a little bit of a tack weld there. Now, the other thing we're going to do, as usual, don't omit this, and I start gluing with the center. The next thing I do after, when we're getting ready to epoxy this, and I'm going to probably repeat this a lot, is always make sure it's square before you epoxy it. Because the CA glue, if you really take your time, which believe it or not, this is taking my time, if you take your time and you just do those little extra steps with the squares and stuff, this should all be pretty well squared up. But in case it's not, before you epoxy it, make sure it is, okay? Make sure it's square. Make sure all these are flush and up. That one's not. There, now it is, baby. Okay, beautiful. All right. Now, what you should do is put these in first before you put these on, because it will help square up your bulkhead. So don't necessarily follow the order I did this in. I'm not too concerned about it because I know I did a pretty good job of making everything nice and straight. But if this is your first build, or you're just not totally sure, you just want to do things by the book, legal-like and honest, then put these in first, then do your chines, okay? Because it does give you forward stability. Okay. Tiny little drops. Don't get carried away. Also, CA glue does fuck all for you. It does no good in a puddle. So don't put on, the more CA you put on, usually the more brittle it makes it, especially with activator, because with activator you don't really have any time to soak into the wood anyway. If I wanted to crack, like say I put this together wrong, and say I wanted to crack these little glue joints that I'm doing, all you do is take a razor blade and just go click, slide it up it, and it'll come right out. So yeah, there is not a hell of a lot of strength in here. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to do those. That's nice and good. Nice and, let's go ahead and square it up. Make sure it's, oops. I just 3D printed some new squares last night. But they're still down in the printer room. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our UC. Oh, that's our upper chine. Sorry, our LC, lower chine. And we're going to do the same thing, pretty much. Okay. Let's start in the middle. First, I just do a made up and just see how it goes. Now, it's very important with your chines to follow the angles of your bulkhead. See that? See that angle there? When we put this in, you want it to follow that angle. You don't want it like that. That's a bad day at the zoo. You want to go like that. Okay? So what I'll usually do with this, same rule applies. Do a dry fit. Now remember how I said CA glue doesn't stick to the laser edge worth of shit? Either does epoxy for that matter. That's okay. For this, for redneck clamps, it's perfect because I don't want it to stick hard. I mean, if it does, great. But in case there's a screw up and I have to change something, it's easy to pop off. Okay? Same thing. I'm going to do it down here. These are a little bit easier than the upper chines because you can kind of see what you're doing a little bit better. Make sure that's good and flush. And then spray your activator at an angle up into the joint. It'll find its way in there. It'll lock you up. If you have like at least 3 of these tacked in, it'll hold pretty well for clamping the rest. But just make sure, you know, it's going to want to go, the chine's going to want to go level, but your bulkhead's going like this. Make sure you apply pressure and you get that to form to that angle because the chine is going to have a twist in it. It's a V-hull. Okay? And then, once I get these all done, I got 3 more joints to do. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay? Now, that joint, that twist, gets more severe the farther up you go. So again, God gave you a neck, use it. Move around, make sure that's in there. Now again, if you want to use clamps, nothing wrong with that. Nobody's going to kick you out of the club for using clamps. That's just how I do it. It's a different devil. Okay? And I'm going to keep holding this one, because this is a fairly severe gradient. And I don't want to, one of the things you'll see if you don't put pressure on the last one you just glued, again, we're using CA glue going into a laser joint. There. And it's not holding hard at all. So when you go to twist this in, chances are really good it's going to pop this one out, and that can be pretty frustrating. So make sure that you have a nice tight joint there and nothing's going to break. This one's a little trickier. Okay. Not horrible. Alright, so this one we might do with epoxy to make it a little bit more proper. Alright, and just for good measure, I'm going to put a little bit of CA, because this can get sanded off anyway. Sorry, smoking hot interruption. I'm going to put a little bit of CA on top of this. This will get sanded off anyway. That's just for extra stiction, because, you know, stickiness and friction. Because when I go to twist that one in, it's going to be a lot of torsion. Alright, I'll be right back. Alright, sorry I'm back. No matter how many times I tell the smoking hot wife, when I'm in the shop. Don't open the door.
No matter what you hear in there, no matter how cruelly I beg you, do not open this door.
Anyway, oh, I forgot to tell you guys, show you, I decorated the shop for Christmas. Look. Done. All right. So where were we? The other side chines. So all C8 in. Make sure we're nice and flush. Make sure everything's there. And rinse and repeat. Do the exact same thing on the other side. And then we're going to go ahead and epoxy them. So let me go ahead and throw that in. Be right back. All right. So check it out. Earl is still alive. Earl's got some gumption, man. Tell you what. Ugh, well, okay, so I rinse and repeat. We got the other side chines tacked in. As for this angle, it's kind of questionable. You'll be tempted to make it flat straight out. Don't. Just kind of follow the natural curve of the wood. We're going to be sanding this down anyway and blending these chines tomorrow. So it's nothing to cry over.
Oh, no tears, please.
At this point to put this in, all right? So what was I going to say? Oh yeah, one tip, and we're gonna go ahead and mix up 30 weight, 30-minute epoxy for these. Any joint that you just did today, any of them, upper, bottom, whatever, you want to glue it, all right? So where are my cups? My God, every time. There we go. All right. So, one thing I want to tell you guys, if you're not used to using CA glue and activator, try not to get super glue, CA glue, on your hands or on your fingertips and then spray it with activator. I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but watch what happens. So there's some CA. See if you can see this. Probably not. Anyway, you will get a chemical burn. Ouch.
Main office and tell him that I said, ow!
In wire, main office, tell them I said, ow, gotcha.
Like, oh my God, that hurts. Really bad. It's worse than getting a solder burn. So we're going to go ahead and mix up some 30 weight, 30-minute epoxy. And then we're just going to go over every joint, because this is the last thing we're doing today. Got some family stuff to do. And I want nice, good absorption in these, because these chines, we're going to be beating on a little bit, because we've got to go ahead and blend them. So you're going to be, doing some pretty heavy sanding, and they hold on the sides of the boat. So we want this to be really good and thick, good and absorbent. Okay. Just take your brush. Now what I do, I don't do the tops, meaning it would be underneath. I don't, because you're going to sand that anyway. So just do it this way. Okay. Now, the one thing you really want to get nailed in is that nose. Don't afraid to really overdo it. I usually put a ton. I got a little bit of a gap there, but that's okay. Once we blend it, she'll be fine. Okay. Just don't even bother going over the tops and bottoms, because you're going to sand it anyhow. Now again, here's our trick. This helps. Bend that up. Helps you get a little bit of an angle in there. Okay? Like Julia Childs in the cooking channel here. Pretty sweet. Alright. It does sometimes feel like that. Now, don't forget to do these deck braces as well. Alright. And I think what we're going to do is just high speed through this. And I'll watch along. Be right back.
I got 8 little fingers and only 2 thumbs. Will you leave me in peace while I get the job done? Can't you see I'm working? Oh.
guys see me screw up? I went and I glued this chine to the that no glue bit. So what happens is you get in the zone, and oh man, you just kind of keep on gluing, glue everything, and just when you think it's over,
It's never over.
you screwed up. So I just take, no big deal, I just take a little bit of alcohol and gently just do that. It'll be fine. It'll pop right off. All right, so I think that is it. I don't think there's anything else that we need to do. So we're going to let this 30-minute cure up. And if you want to really make it sink in, you can take that 30-minute, or the 30 weight as I call it, 30-minute epoxy, and after you mix it, dribble a little bit of denatured alcohol in it, and that will thin it down. It won't ruin the integrity or screw anything up, but it'll make it a little bit more, it changes the viscosity, and it will sink into that wood even deeper. Bada bang. But that's okay, you don't usually need to do that. Now, I told you earlier how light of a tack that CA glue is, because people see me CA glue boats together and they're like, oh, you can't CA a boat, it'll never hold together. No shit, Batman, we know that. But just by applying pressure with the brush, actually pop that CA off. That's how light it is. It is strictly to hold pieces in place. It is not meant for structural support or anything like that. So we're going to let this cook. Tomorrow we're going to go over the chines, and I'm going to show you how to blend the chines, and then we're going to put the sides on. Sides on this one's a little bit different than the cracker. If I get my glue in time, we'll do that, because I'm running low on 30 weight. There's a couple different ways you can do it. So anyway, I'll decide which way that is. So until tomorrow, keep dry side up, kids. Bye.
Down.